Magic had a very good year, 12 more wins this year than last year. Of course, Paolo was likely going to win Rookie of the Year. But we'll start with you, Gabe. How did you feel about the Magic season, and what do you expect for them heading into the summer and into next season?
I think this season they showed a lot of promise. I think what they finished as like the 12th seed, maybe 13. Not at the bottom of the conference, so they showed a little bit of an ability to like win some games, get some winning experience under their belt. And there's still just a ton of room to grow. Like some guys that they kind of brought in just as flyers, like a Bull, or like even you can still consider Markelle that to an extent, kind of showed out and really showed what they could contribute. And so they might be pieces that could stick with them moving forward. But the main thing here is really that you got number one. You took Paolo, and a lot of people thought you were going to take Jabari until like the last second, and you ended up making the right pick. Paolo went on to win Rookie of the Year, and now you're in a situation where you could really add one more great piece onto that and give yourself like a perfect young core to start making a big push. This team from top to bottom, you've got like in the guard play, you've got a lot of options, whether it be like Suggs, Markelle, Cole Anthony, whatever decision they make there of who they're going to keep. Like you've got some at least decent guard play, and they might even use their pick this year to bring in another top guy at that position. They've got the Bulls pick that they could use to bring in another good person. And then like forward positions is even better. You got like Paolo, Franz, and then Wendell at center. Like this starting lineup, they could for real be good for years moving forward. So there's a lot to like here, but I'm going to pass it off to y'all and see what you think.
You go first, ClutchTalk.
Man, you put that perfectly, Gabe. I mean, I think that they had a very predictable season. They finished at the 13th seed, but I mean that's pretty predictable for a young team. But I like Gabe was talking about. I think what wasn't predictable is just how mature Pablo looks. Like on and off the court, like his play, he just looks like he's head and heels above like all rookies, as the Rookie of the Year award alluded to. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna get to the off-season stuff later on whatnot with them, but I mean, they have just an array of players and picks, and they just like all they got to do is decide which way to go. They have all the options as to where they want to go. I mean, like all I know is that they just better not stay put with all the talent they have, and in Suggs and Bull and the Wagner brothers and Markelle Fultz and Wendell Carter, Cole Anthony. I mean, you're going to have to choose who are going to be your top three guys. You're going to have to choose who you're going to go with. And the other guys, you're just going to have to ship to be able to get role players around those top three guys. But right now, I mean, is the way I'm feeling about Orlando Magic, Devin, I'm not going to lie, brother. I got to go with the Pistons. I'm more leaning on the Pistons side as to, who's going to have a better season next year. This is I really am starting to believe in Cade and especially James Wiseman and kind of what they're starting to build out over there. But the Orlando Magic, I'll say this. If they can make I'm not even going to necessarily say a splash because I'm not expecting like a splash to happen in Orlando. But if they can just make something happen with these young players and decide the direction they're going in, they can maybe sneak into the play. They can maybe sneak into the play.
I would say like that's one thing that's good about their rebuilds. Like they set themselves up to where if they feel like they want to accelerate things, like they had the young guys, the pick equity to really make a splash trade if they really wanted to move that direction. But I think either way, I'm just happy to see the development because this is something that we haven't seen in Orlando in a very long time. Like just a real good direction that they're going towards. Obviously, Paolo had a very good rookie year. Should be the runaway for Rookie of the Year voting as far as I'm concerned. But I'm just happy to see guys like Markelle. Everybody knows I'm a Markelle guy, but like see his development this year for him to like really look super confident for one of the first times in his NBA career for a full season was definitely good to see. And then, Franz Wagner, continue to improve his game after having, I guess, kind of a surprise rookie season to some people's standards because he was kind of like, like that fourth guy out of that class that played very well last year, but he even got better. And I'm just, Wendell, I know Devin probably has a million things to say about Wendell, but his continued growth. Shout out to Jamal Mosley because he has done an excellent job developing these guys, getting these guys ready, getting them ready on the defensive side of the floor because they've been gritty. They've played well against some of the best teams in the league too this season. Like I think they beat the Celtics think 3 times this year. Like they played well against some of the best teams. Definitely a little bit of maybe ahead of schedule, like than some people I think than I really thought that they would be. But they're putting themselves in position to make a push to, if not the play-in, potentially the playoffs next season. Man, I'm starting to see the vision with this team pretty high on them. We'll see what decisions they do make when it comes to like picking between those guards. I hope they stick with Markelle, but we'll see how they feel about that financially. But I think they're playing with house money at this point. It's just about making the right decisions.
Yeah, Super Mario Hoop saying the Bulls and me and Gabe's Raptors are going to be worse than Orlando next year. And honestly, there's a legitimate argument for that, depending on how the off seasons go. We all know I'm high on Orlando going into next season. I think they're comfortably going to be in the play-in, and I just don't think they're quite at a level where they're going to do anything more than that. They have their stars. That's the really nice thing for Orlando is they have the hard part done. Like they have Paolo, they have Franz. Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be their center of the future, and he's on an absurdly good deal in 13, 11, and 11 the next 3 years. He's on a super good value deal. The biggest thing for them, like you talked about, ClutchTalk, is they're going to have to start picking a little bit of a direction over the next year or two, and that starts this offseason with their guards because Cole Anthony has a year left and Markelle Fultz has a year left. They're both going to be free agents in a year's time, so they're both extension eligible this summer. And between those two and the fact that Jalen Suggs is still in town and obviously hasn't been amazing through his first 2 years, but definitely had a much better year too than he did his rookie season, and is still a high lottery pick that they've invested so much time and resources in that they're still going to want to have to consider him as part of their future in one way or another. That's going to be the key thing for their offseason is how they start to go in their backcourt. Whether they decide to run with Markelle and with Cole Anthony, they could extend both of those guys, and that basically tells Suggs, look, you're either going to be a backup 2 for us, or you're going to get moved at some point in time before your rookie deal ends, or they could decide to move off of Markelle or Cole Anthony and just opt to not re-sign one of those guys and go with one of them in Suggs. So that's the first type of decision they're going to have to make this offseason. From there, they just got to fill out around the fringes. They need a little bit more shooting. They need a little bit more wing depth. Their starting wings are really good. Their backup wings are absolutely atrocious. That's something they need to address, but they have 2 lottery picks this year. So they have a lot of flexibility there. They can move said pick for some depth. They can move said pick for a better starting 2 alongside Gary Harris if they wanted, or they could just use those picks, replace what they might lose if they trade away Jalen Suggs for future assets, and then add a lot more wing depth. So they're in a really good spot. They already got at least 3 of their 5 starting positions locked down for the foreseeable future in Franz, Paolo, and Wendell. There's no questions there about what they're doing. They just have to figure out what they're doing in the backcourt and give them a year or 2 of some postseason appearances. They're probably not looking to make a star trade this offseason, but if they can continue to be in the postseason, make the play-in this year, maybe they sneak into the playoffs. Maybe they're a top 6 seed the year after that. At that point in time, if a star is available and the stars align, maybe they can make a move. I know it's Orlando and it's not typical, but every once in a while, the stars align and that happens. I mean, Kawhi got Toronto, or Toronto got Kawhi. So you never quite know how those stars will align, but they're just in a point right now. They have a lot of options. They have a lot of flexibility, and that's exactly where you want to be. And because they already have their stars, they should be destined to start improving right in the next year as Paolo and Franz have better years and they get a little bit more depth via the draft, especially hopefully on the wing on a draft that is very non-point guard heavy. They should be able to get some more help on the wing. So they're in a great spot. I'd be really shocked if they don't make at least the play-in next year.
Yeah. Just kind of going back to that guard thing, like, I think Markelle Fultz with his playmaking, just for a young team, and especially with their like core guys that we know are like the stars, I think the fact that you can have a steady point guard like Markelle to distribute to them and kind of run that offense will be really helpful as they continue to grow and get better. And then if they try to end up like doing that trade, I think they have obviously they have like Chicago's first, so they'll have 2 first-round picks coming in that will just be like probably more high-value guys that they can trade for something. And I think if it was like to be a little bit sooner than later, I think Jonathan Isaac's money and Gary Harris's money is still on the books throughout next season. So it's like, a lot of times with young teams, it's like, we want to trade for somebody, but like, who are we going to trade? Because everybody on our roster makes $2 million. Well, I think they're in a situation where it's like, Jonathan Isaac as a forward who has an injury history and is like a little bit older, they might be able to just use him as some like dead money in a trade, or maybe he goes somewhere and like proves he still has something to offer. But like either way, this team has Paolo and Franz, so he's kind of completely expendable. And that's $17 million that could be very valuable in the trade scenario.
Man.
Yeah, they're. I'll just briefly touch on the contracts while you say that. Like they're in a position where they can combine Jonathan Isaac, Gary Harris, Jalen Suggs, and Chuma Okeke, and they can be up to $43 million. So they can easily match salaries for any star trade if they did indeed take that avenue this summer. I think that's probably a little bit earlier than they'll actually do it. And I also don't think stars are their priority. I think they already have their stars, but nonetheless, the options are certainly there.
Yeah, I love how you brought up Jonathan Isaac. I'm really interested to see what's gonna happen there, because I mean, he's a potential defensive player of the year candidate every year that he's actually gets to be out there. He's a great defender, an offensive option. He's a great guy. But honestly, we know what happens in this NBA. If you can't stay healthy, teams do not have no sympathy for you. They don't care about what you can be. They want to see what you actually are gonna do. And unfortunately, I just don't think he's gonna be able to stay healthy. And he might have to get shipped. And Gabe, like how you said, I think he's gonna have to go prove to the rest of the league, like, yo, I'll go take like a 1-year contract or whatever contract and prove I still got some, and then get a bounce back here. So all prayers and hopes up to him, man. But he's gonna have to do it.
Yeah, I just hope that they don't. I hope they keep Markelle. I think that'll end up being a mistake if they end up not keeping him, because I mean, just the way that he's just developed in these last couple of years in Orlando, at least when he's been on the court, because he did have the ACL in 1 year. But, he's taken a lot of big strides with his game, still a relatively really young guard. I would just like to see him build with Paolo, with Franz, with Wendell, and just, pick between Suggs and I think Cole Anthony, because I think Markelle's outplayed those guys. So, he would definitely be the guy that I would try to keep. But, we'll see. It's weird, but I kind of trust him to make the right decisions, which has not been like the Orlando Magic kind of way post Dwight Howard. But, I trust this front office and this regime right now.
Yeah, I think the only argument you could say for whether you want Markelle to be the guy long term or not is Franz and Paolo are clearly going to be the top two guys. Do they want to find someone who's going to be a better off-ball catch-and-shoot three-point shooter? Because Fultz is a very good playmaker. He provides very good rim pressure. But the fact of the matter is Paolo and Wagner, especially come playoff time, are going to have the ball a lot. And so they might get to a point where they decide they want someone better as a three-point shooter, as their off-ball guy, as a point guard, because he is going to spend a lot of time off-ball.
Yeah.
The counter argument to that is in Orlando is their spacing is probably going to be fine anyways, even if Markelle is never going to be a great three-point shooter, because his rim pressure in of itself is enough to counteract that at times, as long as his rim pressure is going to be enough that he can attack bad closeouts enough, and you have to respect his athleticism enough to the point where he can still be productive. And the fact that they have a center that can shoot the three ball as well as Wendell can. If they didn't have a three-point shooting center, it'd be tough. Yeah. It'd be really tough for them to make the spacing work. But I have no doubts with Paolo's three-point shooting. I know his struggles from three are well documented this year. If you ignore his 1 month where he shot 5% from three, I think he was like 33 or 34% from three this year. He's going to be a more than fine three-point shooter. That's not a concern to me. So with that being the case, and I think Wendell is up to over 35% from three this year, they can still get away with Fultz's lack of three-point shooting. And then at that point, personally, I would imagine they retain Cole Anthony over Jalen Suggs, because he's more of your prototypical sixth man who's a really good scorer off the bench. And that's the type of role he embraced this year. It was the best year of his career. Not as many points as year two, but drastic increase in efficiency. And I would imagine that's probably more the way they lean. Maybe Suggs breaks out year three, but I'd imagine Suggs probably does end up being the odd man out.
I think Fultz's playmaking is just way too valuable to this roster. You talk about playoff time, Paolo and Franz are going to have the ball a lot. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And while having a shooter there would be valuable, I think even if they have the ball for stretches, just when it comes playoff time, if you just have super like ISO heavy offense and it's just like, you know, you have the ball, now I have the ball. Not saying they have no playmaking chops, but having an actual true playmaking point guard out there that can truly facilitate just an effective all-around offense throughout a playoff series, if they were to get there, I think where they're at now and with this roster construction, until they have just enough playmaking around the roster to kind of make that not as valuable, Markelle Fultz is a piece you need on this roster.